Yeah, it was really an incredible process from the beginning. Cleo and I talked about the idea of ancestors and what is an ancestor. And in a lot of Black and African traditions, we consider an ancestor to be someone whose life offers us lessons that we can learn and be better from. And we felt like having lost Chassé so soon, the best thing that we could do was find a way to pull out the lessons of his life and to try to continue his mission. What a lot of people don't know is that even though he struggled with mental health, he was also a champion for people to be open and find support for their mental health issues. And so that's what we really connected about. And once Cleo found out that I had a background in mental health and public health and treatment and things like that, she was really excited and felt like I was the person to tell the story. And it was off to the races from there. You know, he was very, very skilled. And when you watch the film, you see the complexity of that because it wasn't without strategy. So even though there were moments that are extremely vulnerable, you also know that he's very, very brilliant in using social media as a tool to maximize his reach. And so in the wake of so much controversy, you know, it really leaves these irreconcilable questions for us as a society and as audience members for how do we interpret an artist's behavior? What is the value and importance of vulnerability? How much can we judge? How much can we know? So those were the questions that I was really fascinated by from the beginning. And I don't think that I have any final answers, but I think the film offers a space to really reflect on those ideas. Well, he was diagnosed bipolar from a really early age. The criminal justice system impacted him through the incarceration and deportation of his father at the age of 10. He claims to have witnessed the abuse of his mother. So, you know, these traumas happening at an early age really shape a person's psyche. And what's most painful to me is that like you mentioned before, he was very introspective and very public with his introspection. And I think even though you sort of never know what's inside a person's head, there was an authenticity to him that you could really feel and see in that introspection. And when he died, he was just starting to begin to understand. He was just starting to find self-compassion. He was just finding vulnerability, like in his difficult moments with people. One of the things that really sits with me is that it was sort of unanimous that toward the end of his life, when conflict would arise, his reaction was night and day from what it had been before. And, you know, with someone so young, we just never know who he might have been and how he might have grown if given the opportunity. Yeah, I mean, I think the reality and one of the things, the surprising things that the film shows is those actions that are very disturbing are also the ones that catalyze the most attention. And ultimately, I think he found himself, and a lot of young rappers are finding themselves in a situation where they're being simultaneously rewarded and condemned for the very same actions. And it puts these young people in an impossible position. The other thing that I would say is, you know, as colonized people, as the descendants of people who were enslaved, we were brought here through violence. Violence was inflicted on us in order to shape our being into people who could be laborers. And that violence gets passed down generationally. It doesn't disappear without some type of real intervention and healing. And so I think it's a privilege to be scandalized by violence. And I think that collectively we can be more honest with ourselves about the fact that violence and disturbing things pop up in our everyday lives. They pop up in different corners of our families and our social circles. And a lot of times we ignore it. And then when we see a public presentation of it, it becomes illegible to us. But it was important for me to present this and to say that while it may be unforgivable, it is not illegible. It's not impossible to understand. It is not impossible to see where it comes from. And I think if we can understand where it comes from, we can understand how to heal and change some of these patterns, because those fights that he got into, that is, in a certain sense, the culture of young men that's happening in these hidden spaces, in these spaces that are exclusive to young people. And it's celebrated. It's how they're establishing status and credibility and worth and value. And I think that those of us who are older and who have a responsibility of stewardship, we really need to be in relationship to that fact and try to make sense of it and figure out Is there something there that's positive? Are there spaces where people need to be able to express those types of energies safely? Which I think his concerts were that for a lot of people. Like you can see there's these throngs of young people, primarily young men, engaged in this really primitive sort of physicality. And it's a facet of who we are as human beings. So how do we channel it? How do we recognize it? How do we honor it and place it in a space that is safe and conducive rather than harmful?